Well, thanks for taking a second to talk to me about Deadpool. I've just got
Of
a
course.
quick couple questions to ask you. What excited you about coming back and working on Deadpool 2?
That's an excellent question. Well, I'll tell you, Matt Winston. Here's the thing. Anytime one of us gets to go back and revisit our work, it's a chance to fix it, or to alter it to something that maybe we had in mind originally. So on this one, I was excited. The first of all, the big mandate from Ryan was, in this movie, he's no longer. The first movie was split into threes. He into thirds. So the third of the movie, he's handsome, or he's himself, Ryan Reynolds. For a third of the movie, he's in the scar makeup, and a third of the movie's in the mask. In this movie, he's half and half. Right? There's no more good-looking guy. So it's a lot more makeup, and he's very concerned about. Look, it's 3.5. It's almost 4 hours in the chair every day on the first movie. So the number one mandate for him was, God, please, can you figure out a way to make this go faster? Because I'm totally cool with it. I'm there for you, and I will sit. He said, but if there's any way to trim any fat off it, I would so appreciate it. So that was my number one concern. Number two was I really wanted to kind of revisit the sculpture and try to refine it a little bit. There are things about the first one I didn't really like. So I got to do that. So I did 2 in 1. I completely re-engineered the makeup. I resculpted it. I kind of changed little things I didn't like about it, and tweaked little things. And we reduced the makeup time from like 3.5, at least 3 hours and 50 minutes on average, to literally it was like an hour and 50 minutes.
That's incredible. Wow.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was huge. With the same people. I mean, I had the same 2 main assistants. Was Mike Fields and Jeff Redknapp in Vancouver, who were just amazing. They were with me on the first one, and on days where we had like his arms, full arms exposed, I had Bronwyn Solney. I don't know how you say her last name. I'll send it to you. Who Joel Harlow recommended, because Joel used her on Star Trek, and she painted that beautiful shell girl, his niece, or his stepdaughter. So she's a great painter, and I needed here's the thing. On the first movie, I pre-painted everything myself. So I would get Ryan ready, send him a set. On days where he wasn't working, all I did was paint appliances and pre-paint them to get the level of detail I wanted, because there was so much paint work on those appliances. On this movie, I had a bunch of other stuff to do. I just didn't want to be sitting in the trailer all day long painting appliances, especially with him being in the makeup so much longer. So I thought, I just want a really solid painter that can at least get the appliances like 80% there, and then I could just do a final pass on them. And so Joel said you should get her, and Monica Hubert, my department head, contacted her and said, Bill would really like to have you. The caveat was, in order to justify her working on the show, is like I could use her as a makeup artist on the days where we needed a fourth makeup artist to do his arms and everything, which she was very nervous about, but we talked her into it, and ultimately she did a great job, and she was, she loved. She had a great time. And not to mention, other shit happened. Did you see the movie yet?
I haven't yet.
Okay, so other shit happens to him. Like, there are changes in the makeup. It doesn't stay static and stay exactly the same for the movie. So I got to actually alter. There's nothing more fun for us, than to do makeups on top of makeups. It's like you create a character, but then to do changes within that character, which is really fun. So he actually gets to have, he gets to change his look a little bit, which I had a blast with. So that was really neat. So we had a couple of different looks. I think that was basically it for him. I mean,
here's just a few things to fill in the blanks. What prosthetic materials were used for Ryan? Was it foam, silicone, transfers, a combo? What?
No, definitely it was all silicone, all paper-thin silicone pieces. Although, because with the way I redesigned the head, originally on the first movie, he had a bald cap that we'd glue his hair down, we'd put a bald cap on him. We'd have to glue all his beard down, his big stubble beard, because he had to have it for the first movie, because we were going back and forth, and we had to do, put tattoo transfers over that. It was so complicated, the first movie. That's what added a lot of time. this movie, what I did is I redesigned it in such a way that his head, we would tack his hairline down. We would put a couple of strips. Chris Nelson gave me this great idea that they used on Bright and on Nebula for Guardians of the Galaxy, where we just took the opsite tape. It's like a 2-inch opsite tape, and we would just strap his head, like from ear to ear with the tape, nice and tight, and that would give us like a glue, like a purchase place to glue, and we would just put a couple of those strips on him, and then I made the entire back of his head basically like a bald cap out of undeadened silicone, but it was the finished look. It was an actual sculpted piece that was pre-painted so that it was completely done. So once that undeadened, slightly stiffer silicone went on and blended on, and all the other pieces, which now could be smaller, because in the first movie the back of the head was literally just the very back of the head, and the cheeks and the forehead were way bigger, which made them harder to apply. This time the bald cap piece was on, it was completely cosmetically finished, and the other pieces would overlap it, and they were a little thinner, smaller, and that's what helped cut my time way down. But it was all silicone, and again, but everything was slightly different. Like the neck was different, smaller, yeah. So that helped.
Got it. Couple other questions, and then we're done. You mentioned Ryan really wanted to limit his time in the chair. Understandable. Given the adjustments you made, how was it to work with Ryan on this film? What kind of an actor is he in terms of a prosthetic friendly performer?
He couldn't have been better. I mean, he would come in, he would joke, he would always sit still. He was he was always in good spirits. He never came in. He was no Debbie Downer, like depressed that he had to sit in a chair. I'm like, Christ Almighty, I got to do this again. He was always great. So I got to hand it to him, because he went through it a lot. And on days where we had to enhance the makeup and add things to it, he was like all excited about it. Just like us, he was excited for him to change it and mix it up a little bit. And and he was always great. I mean, he never an issue with touching him up or always like he goes, hey, is this a problem? He would come up and check with me, and he was just fantastic.
Great, good to hear, because he seems like a lovable guy, He is that guy. He's that guy, which is great. And he could so easily not be, but that's good to hear.
Right.
So quickly, let's talk about. I saw you, or maybe Smithson put up a picture and gave you a shout out. We haven't talked about Cable at all, or any other characters.
We should touch on them. There's so much. I mean, here's the thing, Cable. Cable was a very big character for us, right? So, I'd done multiple designs for other actors, before Josh came on, and we were getting very close to shooting, and we had no Cable guy yet. And we had conceptual artwork that the studio had done. I had a bunch of brilliant, conceptual artists at ILM and all over the place doing conceptual work. I did stuff. There was a general consensus of what he should be, and then when Josh dropped in our lap, it was life cast him, get going. We have to he's going to be testing in a month and a half, and so it was a lot on Andy Clement, and his shop, because they just waited to the last minute, getting Josh, because they just couldn't find somebody, and Josh came in to save the day, and it's a very complicated makeup. Ironically, more complicated than the Deadpool makeup, and to look at it, it doesn't seem like it. I mean, to look at it, you're like, oh, it's Josh. It just looks like Josh, and he's got a scar, and what's the big deal? But it's when production's like, well, why is he in the chair longer than Ryan? Well, first of all, Ryan, we had a whole movie to figure out Ryan and get him down faster. And Josh's makeup kept evolving as we started shooting. Like, Mike would keep refining it. So anyway, conceptually, I know what this makeup's going to be. I have to find a makeup artist, because obviously I'm busy with Ryan, and I knew this was a very big makeup, and I had to find somebody who could come in and do that makeup and run with it, and and just make it amazing. And Mike, the first person that comes to mind, and I instantly think, first of all, I always looked up to Mike. He's one of my heroes, and he's done that type of makeup. I've seen him do that type of makeup before on movies, and I just knew he would kill it. He's like the perfect person, and he's funny and he's charming. And he's got everything that you need. So Mike came in and was involved in, we had already conceptualized it and started sculpting everything and started generating pieces before Mike was even, because Mike was working in Hawaii, finishing up like in Marvels and Humans. So he came into it literally right before we were going to set, and came into it and started, looking at the stuff and figuring it out. And I had my initial concept was, here's the thing. It's like, it's a guy who's got a disease that's turning him into a robot, right? So it's not like the Terminator where you've got like a endoskeleton and that their skin ripped away and underneath is endoskeleton, right? This is like skin. It's like metal turning into skin, turning into robot. It's like a disease that's growing on him. So I really thought it'd be cool. Like, I don't want the metal's got to be rigid. It's got to look like metal and hard. But then but there's a lot of skin involved that's mutated and it's kind of messed up. And I go, and they can't be made of the same material, right? In my head, I'm thinking, well, they got to be two different materials. And plus I had this idea that the skin would be translucent and that you would see the robot stuff underneath the skin where the overlaps were. So I had this brilliant idea to create a whole layer of the the metalature, the biomech disease on his neck, is growing up his neck and everything, and on his chest and on his back, and then the skin would overlap that and be painted so you could actually see it growing into the metal or vice versa. So that meant generating multiple sculptures of each, so all the mech had to be sculpted, then those had to be molded, and overlapping skin pieces had to be sculpted and everything. And the big problem is the design kept changing. The studio kept looking at it and making alterations, so it kept pushing our finish date. It was just a nightmare, dude. It was just a nightmare. And Richie Alonso did a lot of the work. I had Aki doing a lot of sculpting on it, and Pepe Mora, three great sculptors working on that stuff. And Andy supervising all of it, of course. And eventually and then when we started testing it, when we got it to set, we started testing it. The problem was the character, the way the costume was designed. Josh is in like a t-shirt. He's got shoulder straps and straps from guns and weapons and belts and all this stuff over his shoulders, and he's whipping giant heavy guns around. It was basically a costume and a character designed to destroy a makeup. Like the poor guy's own neck would have been destroyed, but yet we have all these silicone appliances all around him on his neck, and he's fighting. And just in rehearsals, Mike and I were looking at him going like, holy shit, like nothing is going to survive this. Like these straps and all this stuff on his neck and that he's whipping around, they're just going to shred this makeup in literally like an hour, that there's going to be nothing left on him. So poor Mike had to deal with that like every day. And what we found was, because I initially thought I'd make the two different appliances, which required like a couple of days of prep. You'd have to assemble each of the big sets of appliances that went on him, that wrapped around his neck and onto his body, were like, 4 appliances that had to be assembled, pre-painted, completely assembled, painted, assembled together, and then painted again. There was like this multiple process to get the look of it, and then applied to him, obviously. And what we found out was, because the mech was stiffer and had harder surfaces and the skin was soft, that when he would fight, the mech would just split, just pop, right? No matter how well you glued it. And Mike super glued them. He like covered everything with silicone, and they would still pop and split and separate because they weren't the same material. So eventually what we wound up doing, I was so nervous of the skin looking like, the mech looking like silicone and wrinkling and not being stiff, that I was so afraid to go there. So what we wound up doing was finding a happy medium where both materials were very similar in density. They were still soft enough, but they were stiff enough. It was just a nightmare trying to come up with what that consistency was. And that's eventually where we stayed, and what Mike, dealt with every day. and then on top of all that, once that got all figured out, Mike and I did, and Mike did it. I oversaw it and would give suggestions. Josh would do the same thing, but on his face scar, the thing with all the Marvel characters, dude, they all have a scar on their face, around their eye. Nick Fury, freaking, like, there's like 5 main Marvel characters who have a robot arm and a scar on their face. And so, how do you do that and justify it? And it doesn't, it's like in the comic book, it's great. You can draw whatever you want. You got to give it like iconic motifs, right? So it looks great in an illustration. But when you do it practically and you're like, it's a real guy in a real makeup, and what the hell happened? And how did he get this? And why does he have a scar around one eye? And by the way, it's not the bionic eye that's affected. It's the normal eye, which wouldn't have been. That would be the one that would be all fucked up. Like, it messes with your head when you're trying to rationalize it, making it. So Mike and Josh just sat for 3 days straight and just did scars on his face, trying to come up with a design that worked really well. And eventually, it was old school makeup. Mike just said, you know what? We had all these transfers and all this stuff sculpted. Richie had sculpted all. I had Photoshop stuff, and Richie had sculpted beautiful stuff, and he applied them all, and we're looking at them all, and and it's always like, yeah, I wish it was like this or like that. And so finally, Mike is like, you know what? Just screw this. Let's just do a collodion scar on him and look at it, because nothing's cooler than collodion, right? So he does the old-fashioned rigid collodion on him, like the platoon Tom Berenger collodion, and he does that on him, and of course it looks bitchin'. It just puckers Josh's whole cheek in, and and we're like, yeah, that looks really cool. So then Mike and I life casted him in the trailer. There's a picture of it. Josh posted it on his Instagram, and then we did a clay pour of that, and I went in and retooled it really nicely, and we made a transfer of that, and that's the scar he wears, and it just looked awesome, but it was like just weeks and weeks, and literally he started shooting the movie with a completely different scar. The first couple of scenes of the movie, he's wearing, we didn't get it yet, and we're just like, fuck it, we're just going to put something on him. So it's kind of there, but it's not quite the same thing, and
any other characters? I apologize. I'm going to see it this weekend. I honestly am a huge fan of the first one, and I can't wait to see it.
There's Domino, which is the Zazie Beetz, who plays Domino, who's this the female superhero, and in the comic books, it's Kate Beckinsale from Underworld. She's the all black leather, and she's got the white face and the black circle around her eye and the punk black hair, and it's a very iconic look in the comic books. But again, you can't do that in the movie because it's been done a billion times, right? And they cast Zazie, who's this gorgeous, dark-skinned, with this awesome afro, and it's like, why so again, I did with Monica Hubert and we did, weeks and weeks of testing. Do we do pale skin on her skin? I mean, is that going to be like really a bad idea? And we tried it, and of course it goes gray and it looks like shit. And you're like, okay, we're not doing that, right? I'm not going white face on a black girl. And so we're like, let's embrace her skin color. So then, are we doing a black dot around her eye? Are we doing a brown dot? Or is it vitiligo? Is it what size is it? Is it makeup? Is it tattoo? Is it is it a birth defect? It's like, again, all these questions, you're like trying to make it realistic. So much different when you're doing it in real, for real, than you're doing it in a comic. So I have sheets and sheets and sheets. It would be so funny if I posted them. I just don't know if the studio would want me to, of all the different designs. Like, because people criticize, like, why did they change it from the comic books? And it's like, they cast this great actress who's got all this personality. You can't do a textbook, as it's drawn. It just doesn't work. So, we tried everything by the book, and you see that it doesn't work. And, we had the costume designers had pictures up on the wall of the supermodel that's got vitiligo, right? And she's so cool looking, and it's so striking looking. And we're like, well, doesn't that make sense, for her skin tone and it to be a real thing, and it's like, how often do they get celebrated? Women with like this the skin condition that is not, horrible. It's actually pretty beautiful looking. And so we tried that. We camera tested it, and everybody, the director and Zazie and everything was said, God, it just that kind of it's attractive. I came up with the idea of using a contact lens on her because I thought maybe that'll give it something special, a little extra something like lightened her eye, and it just looked bitchin'. And so that's what we went with. And Monica, had to come up with all these amazing, cool stencils and just to make sure it was consistent, and she's got it on her hands and on the rest more parts of her, and so that was kind of cool. So that was her, right? Again, a huge thing every day.
Yep.
And then Deadpool gets thrown in prison, and in the prison we did a bunch of mutants, like every X-Men movie has got like all their mutants, and so we did a whole bunch of mutants, and there were some mutants that the studio and the director were excited to here's a list of cool mutants, like bad guys, like Easter eggs that we'd love to do and just have in the background and see if anybody picks up on them, obviously. So we did that. And that was kind of fun. And Andy Clement had a good time with that and coming up with a bunch of generic looking cool mutants. You know what we did? We basically did, you're in Vancouver, you're not going to get amazing looking people, you're not going to get faces like Andy and I kept saying, you're not going to get people like from The Name of the Rose, like those amazing looking European, mangled faces. So Andy had the guys sculpt a bunch of really cool character looking faces. And then we just did little mutant things on them, to kind of enhance each of the guys. And then we had women too, and we threw in some iconic looking X-Men-y type characters, different colored skin and everything. And then there's a couple of cameos in it that I can't talk about, and I don't want to tell you about until you see it, that are pretty freaking awesome, that are also required a lot of makeup, that are kind of out there, but they're not really public knowledge yet. But if you search deep enough, you might find them.
Ooh, I'm gonna be keeping my eyes open when I see it.
Yeah,
That's
but
exciting.
don't go looking for it until you see the movie, and then you can go dig
So
deep.
I got to go see it twice.
It's pretty fun. Pretty amazing stuff.
Quickly, were there any other main characters to talk about? You said Cable, Deadpool, the Domino, and then the mutants, or was there anything?
And then the mutants.
Okay,
that's kind of it. I mean, we have the X-Force team,
right.
but relatively simple. There's one of the superheroes is like Shatterstar, and he's in the comics he's got like Paul Stanley from Kiss. He's got like a star around his eye, and contacts I gave him, and like little things like that. But no other big daily makeup things. There's some gags that we did that were really funny makeup gags, but that's basically it.
Got it.
Look,
that's a lot. That's a lot, dude.
It's a ton.
It's a ton. Then this leads to my final question, Bill. I personally believe we're kind of in a renaissance of makeup in a way. Look at the Oscars. Look at the film that won Best Picture with a guy in a rubber fish suit. Look
How
at
wonderful was that,
Darkest Hour and Wonder, and just lots of really cool stuff happening in high-profile, well-regarded films. Where do you think the makeup industry is, the prosthetic effects industry is, just from where you are in the trenches? Where do you think we're at?
I think, I think if quality movies keep using that stuff, it's always going to be viable. I think when actors see what's capable of it, what it can bring to them, it can bring them Academy Awards. If you go back and chart the amount of actors who have won Oscars that have been in makeup, Nicole Kidman in The Hours, like Charlize Theron, you really think about it, it's been quite a few, and that'll never go away, I think. And nowadays, more than ever, there's a lot of big movies that have amazing stuff, but if you go deep, there's I just finished a movie, again, another movie with Nicole Kidman, Foxcatcher, where these are small little low budget movies that have really fun makeups in them, very complicated, involved makeups, and that affect the entire movie. And if done well, help the movie, propel the movie, to sometimes even greater success. That's on us. My movie with Nicole just sold at Cannes, and to Annapurna, God bless him, and number one selling point was Nicole and how she looked. It's like, oh my God, we got another one of those. We can ride, we can use this. I mean, this is something that makes this movie stand out, so that helps all of us, that's like, oh my God, like maybe in other movies can say, yeah, I need some of that. I get calls every day, dude, to do, what can you do? Even Kazu's calling me up saying now he's getting his phone's ringing off the hook. Now, of course it is. So that's cool, and obviously it's great that the biggest movie in the world, Avengers, he's just full of makeups, amazing makeups, so that's good for all of us.
Well, I love hearing it from you because it's what I've been seeing as well. And
yeah.
Thank you, buddy. I know you've been working hard and traveling. Thanks for taking the time out to talk to me about this.
Happy to.